Okay, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something that sounds, well, maybe a bit technical. Currency exchange rates.
That's right, but it's tied to a specific U.S. congressional bill, the China Exchange Rate Transparency Act of 2025. We're using the bill text itself as our source here.
And it really touches on things like global trade, economic stability, maybe even your wallet indirectly.
Exactly. It's all about how predictable, or maybe unpredictable, the global financial system feels.
So our mission for this deep dive, let's figure out what this bill is really about, why Congress is focused on China's currency transparency, and what it wants the U.S. to do at the IMF, the International Monetary Fund.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, let's unpack the source then. It tells us the official name, China Exchange Rate Transparency Act of 2025. Passed the House back in February 25, now it's over in the Senate.
Right. And the bill, it kicks things off by laying out some findings, so sort of the why behind it. What's interesting is it mentions commitments China already has under IMF rules.
Commitments like?
Things like, maintaining orderly exchange rate arrangements, not manipulating their currency for unfair advantage, cooperating with IMF surveillance.
Surveillance meaning the IMF keeping tabs on their economy.
Yeah, basically keeping an eye on things and also providing data, like how much foreign currency they hold. Standard stuff for major economies, really.
Okay, but here's where it seems to get specific. The bill points to a U.S. Treasury report from November 2022. And according to the bill, that report found China gives, what, very limited transparency?
That's the phrase used in the bill, yeah. Very limited transparency regarding key parts of how they manage their exchange rate, and specifically mentions activities in the offshore currency market.
Offshore market. So trading happening outside China's direct domestic controls, making it harder to see.
Exactly. Less visibility. And the bill says the Treasury report noted this lack of transparency, plus other tools China uses. It makes it tough for Treasury to figure out what actions are actually meant to influence the exchange rate.
So it's hard to tell what's really going on.
Right. And the source says the report described China as an outlier. That's a strong word. An outlier among major economies on this transparency issue, warranting close monitoring.
An outlier. Okay, so given that finding, what does this bill actually propose the U.S. do?
Well, the core instruction is pretty direct. It tells the U.S. Treasury Secretary to instruct the U.S. representative at the IMF or person there to use the U.S. voice and vote.
Our influence, basically.
Exactly, to push for more transparency from China within that IMF framework.
And what kind of transparency are we talking about? What specifically does it ask for?
It gets specific. It asks the U.S. to push for enhanced IMF surveillance. And that includes looking for potential indirect intervention.
Indirect, like not the central acting directly, but maybe?
Right, maybe through state-owned companies or, state-owned financial institutions doing currency trades that achieve the same goal. Stuff that's maybe not immediately obvious as official policy.
Got it. And it also mentions comparing China's policies to others.
Yeah, it asks in any significant differences between China's exchange rate policies and those of other major currency issuers, specifically the ones in the IMF's special drawing rights basket, the SDR.
SDR, that's like the IMF's own currency blend, right?
Yeah.
Dollar, euro, yen, pound, and the renminbi itself.
That's the one. So the bill wants any big differences between China's approach and these other major players to be explicitly raised in the regular IMF check-ins, the consultations with China.
And there was one more thing about being a responsible stakeholder.
Right. It suggests that China's track record on transparency, how it acts as a responsible stakeholder in the global system, should be considered during IMF reviews, like when they're looking at things like voting power within the IMF.
So essentially using the IMF structure and U.S. influence to press for more openness from China on its currency stuff based on that Treasury report and existing rules.
That sums it up pretty well. It's leveraging that international forum.
Okay, let's connect this back. Why should someone listening right now, maybe running a business or working somewhere that deals internationally, why should they care about currency transparency?
Well, it really boils down to predictability. For any business involved in global trade, or even large companies you might invest in or work for, understanding exchange rate movements is crucial for managing risk.
Unpredictable rates mean unpredictable costs, right?
Exactly. And a lack of transparency about how a major currency is being managed, that just adds a big layer of uncertainty to the whole global marketplace. It makes it harder for everyone to plan, to invest, to operate efficiently. It's about trying to ensure a more level playing field.
So this bill, it really kind of puts a spotlight on that tension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Between how one country manages its money and how that impacts everyone else globally.
Absolutely. It highlights the ongoing debate about national economic management versus the need for international cooperation and transparency for overall global economic stability.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. This push for transparency focused on currency. What might that suggest about the future? How central could currency issues become in global policy debates moving forward? And what does that tell us about where international economic relations might be heading?
Definitely something to think about.
That wraps up our deep dive into the China Exchange Rate Transparency Act of 2025 based on the source material. Thanks for joining us.